Welcome, dear listener, to this comforting trip through history. If you're just settling in for the night, get comfortable and let the cares of the day fade away. Tonight, we'll be taking a little trip back in time to explore what life was like in a medieval tavern. Wherever in the world you may be tuning in from, and whatever time of day or night it is in your corner of the globe, I'm glad you're here. Feel free to share in the comments where you're listening from. It's always a delight to see the far-reaching community we have here. And if you enjoy these quiet musings on history, do stick around and subscribe for more journeys into the past. But for now, let's set our scene. Imagine, if you will, that you're a weary traveller, making your way down a dusty road as the sun begins to set over a humble medieval village. The air is crisp and cool, filled with the earthy scents of wood smoke and fallen leaves. As you round a bend, you catch sight of a welcoming glow in the distance, the warm, flickering light of a tavern window. Drawing closer, you hear the muffled sounds of laughter and chatter floating out into the evening air, mingling with the clinking of tankards and the crackle of a hearth fire. You quicken your pace, eager to step out of the chill and into the embrace of good company and a hot meal. Pushing open the heavy wooden door, you're greeted by a rush of warmth and the lively hum of conversation. The tavern is a cozy space with low-beamed ceilings and sturdy trestle tables worn smooth by countless elbows and tankards. The walls are hung with simple rustic decor, a stag's head here, a faded tapestry there. Candles flicker in wrought iron sconces, casting a gentle golden glow over the convivial scene. At the centre of it all stands William, the tavern keeper. He's a stout, jovial man in his middle years, with ruddy cheeks and a neatly trimmed beard streaked with silver. As he moves among the tables, greeting patrons and collecting empty tankards, you can sense the air of warm authority he carries. This is a man who keeps a welcoming hearth and a well-stocked larder, but also knows how to command a room and keep the peace when needed. William's family has run this tavern for generations, passed down from father to son for as long as anyone can remember. He grew up scampering between the barrels and learning the secrets of pouring a perfect pint at his father's knee. Now, he takes great pride in maintaining the old traditions while putting his own special touch on things. As you settle onto a bench and catch William's eye, he nods in welcome and sends a serving girl over with a hearty meat pie and a foaming tankard of ale. "Good eve, traveller," he greets you warmly, wiping his hands on his apron. "You've come to the right place to chase away the chill. We'll get some hot food in your belly and a fire at your feet, and you'll be right as rain." You thank him gratefully, savouring the rich aroma of the pie and the earthy, slightly sweet scent of the ale. As you eat, you take in the tavern and its patrons in more detail. The benches are filled with a motley assortment of folk, from farmhands and craftsmen in homespun tunics to the odd well-dressed merchant or two. Here and there you spot a few hooded travellers, their faces hidden in shadow, strangers passing through on mysterious errands. Over in one corner, a group of regulars are engrossed in a lively game of dice, their raucous laughter and groans of dismay punctuating the general hubbub. You spot John the blacksmith, his massive shoulders hunched over the table as he rattles the dice in a calloused fist. Beside him sits Thomas the baker, his flowery apron speckled with ale stains as he slaps his thigh and guffaws at some joke. Serving wenches weave deftly between the tables, their arms laden with trays of fragrant stew, crusty bread, and rounds of pungent cheese. The air is filled with the clatter of wooden platters and the slosh of ale and cider as the patrons eat and drink their fill. In one corner, a pair of grizzled old-timers are deep in their cups, their greying heads bobbing as they sing a slightly off-key tavern song. As the night wears on, the mood in the tavern ebbs and flows like a tide. A group of travelling minstrels strikes up a merry tune, and soon the floor is filled with stamping feet and whirling skirts as the patrons dance and cavort. Cheeks are flushed, eyes bright with ale and merriment. For a little while, the cares of the workaday world are forgotten in favour of simple pleasures and good company. But even in this warm cocoon of fellowship, hints of a harsher world outside creep in. You overhear snatches of conversation, talk of failed crops, of harsh taxes levied by the lord of the manor. There are whispers too of outlaws on the roads and strange doings in the wild places beyond the village. For most of these simple folk, the tavern is a rare respite from lives of toil and uncertainty, a place to find comfort and cheer amidst the hardships of medieval life. As the hour grows late, the crowd begins to thin. Yawns are stifled, tankards drained, and coins counted out to settle tabs. A few stubborn revellers linger on, but most have fields to till and livestock to tend come morning. William and his staff set to work cleaning up, stacking benches and banking the fire for the night. You find your own eyelids growing heavy, lulled by the warmth and the wine. Perhaps you'll secure a pallet by the hearth and stay till morning. The tavern doubles as an inn for weary travellers after all. As you drift off to sleep, the dying embers of the fire mingle with the snores of your fellow patrons, and the scent of wood smoke and spilled ale wraps around you like a blanket. Outside, the village lies dark and still under a canopy of stars, the tavern's windows glowing like drowsy eyes in the night. Come dawn, the place will stir to life again, ready to welcome another day's batch of farmers, farriers, and far-flung wanderers. But for now, it rests, a sturdy bulwark of fellowship standing firm against the uncertainties of the medieval world beyond its weathered walls. This tavern is more than just ale and hot food, more than just a place to rest a weary head. In a time when life was often harsh and precarious, places like this were vital threads in the fabric of community. They were spaces where social bonds were forged and reinforced, where news was shared and deals were struck, where the collective story of a people was written night after night in the flicker of hearthfire and the murmur of voices. The tavern was the great equalizer, a place where the lines between serf and freeman, craftsman and merchant blurred a little in the glow of good company and shared humanity. Rich or poor, high-born or low, all were welcome to sit elbow to elbow and break bread together, united by the universal comforts of a full belly and a warm fire. Of course, taverns were far from perfect. They could be rowdy, even dangerous places at times. Brawls were not uncommon when tempers flared and ale flowed too freely. Dice games and gambling could breed quarrels, and sometimes darker deeds were plotted in shadowy corners over whispered conspiracies. There was a reason, after all, why the medieval church often looked askance at the goings-on in taverns. But for all their flaws and foibles, these humble establishments played an incalculable role in the social and cultural life of the Middle Ages. They were incubators of community in a world where life was often fragmented and uncertain, offering a precious space for people to come together and affirm their shared humanity in the face of hardship. And so, we raise a glass, metaphorically speaking, to the medieval tavern and all who gathered within its walls. To the tavern keepers like William, who poured their lives into creating havens of warmth and welcome. To the countless souls who found fellowship and respite under their roofs. And to the enduring spirit of community that they embodied. As we let the embers of our imagined hearth fire burn low and prepare to drift off into dreams of long-ago lives and bygone days, let us carry with us a little of that spirit. In a world that can often feel as precarious and uncertain as any medieval peasants, may we remember the power of simple things, a shared meal, a kind word, a sense of belonging, to bind us together and light the darkness. Good night, dear listener, and sweet dreams of warm hearthfires and the laughter of good company until we meet again. As the storyteller's tale comes to an end, the tavern erupts in appreciative applause and cheers. The weary traveller takes a deep bow, gratified by the warm reception. He accepts a mug of ale from William with a grateful nod before settling back into his seat, the flickering firelight dancing across his weathered features. Around the room, conversations resume as the patrons digest the incredible story they've just heard. A group of merchants in the corner debate the veracity of the teller's claims, wondering if distant lands could truly be so different from their own. Meanwhile, a pair of wide-eyed village children beg their father to let them stay just a bit longer, hoping to hear more of the stranger's adventures. William surveys the scene with a contented smile. Nights like these are what make all the long hours and hard work worthwhile. There's something deeply satisfying about seeing his tavern filled with laughter, stories, and a sense of camaraderie. In a world that can often be harsh and unforgiving, places like this offer a reprieve, a chance to come together and remember the simple joys of community. As the evening stretches on, the crowd begins to thin. Farmers and labourers, knowing they must be up at first light, drain the last of their cups and bid their drinking companions farewell. A few travellers wearily make their way up the narrow wooden stairs to the sleeping quarters, eager for a night's rest before continuing on their journeys come morning. In a quiet corner, the two young villagers who spent the night exchanging shy glances finally muster the courage to strike up a conversation. Heads bowed close together, they chat and laugh softly, oblivious to the knowing looks and good-natured ribbing from the older patrons. William starts to make his rounds, collecting empty tankards and plates, and gently encouraging the more reluctant guests that it's time to wind down for the night. He pauses to bank the fire, the warm glow slowly fading to embers as he carefully stacks the remaining logs. As the last patrons stumble out into the quiet streets, William and his staff begin the nightly ritual of tidying up. They sweep the rushes strewn across the floor, wipe down the sturdy oak tables, and count out the day's earnings. It's tired work, but gratifying in its own way, a reminder of a job well done. Finally, with everything in its place, William takes one last look around his tavern. The great hall, so lively and boisterous just hours before, now stands silent and still. The only sound is the soft crackle of the dying embers in the hearth. With a contented sigh, he climbs the stairs to his own modest quarters. As he settles into bed, he reflects on the evening and all the nights like it he's seen over the years. So many stories shared, so many bonds forged over a shared meal and a mug of ale. It's a simple life, but one he wouldn't trade for all the riches in the world. As sleep starts to claim him, William's thoughts turn to the day ahead. There will be orders to place with the brewers, supplies to restock, repairs to oversee. The work of a tavern keeper is never truly done. But he rests easy, knowing that come nightfall, his tavern will once again spring to life, a beacon of warmth and fellowship in a sometimes cold world. Outside, the village lies hushed and dormant, save for a stray dog padding silently down the moonlit lane. One by one, the lamps in the windows flicker and fade, until only the soft glow of the tavern's banked hearth remains. It's a scene that has played out countless times over the centuries in towns and hamlets across the land, a testament to the enduring spirit of community that lies at the heart of the medieval tavern. For those weary souls who find respite and companionship within its walls, the tavern is more than just a place to eat and drink. It's a second home, a refuge from the cares of the world outside. And though kingdoms may rise and fall, wars rage and plagues ravage the land, there will always be a need for such places, for the laughter and the songs, the stories and the kinship they offer. As the village sleeps, the tavern stands watch, a silent guardian of the simple dreams and hopes of the common folk. And come morning, as the first rays of sunlight streak the eastern sky, it will be ready to welcome them once again, to offer a hearty meal, a crisp cider, and the promise of another evening spent in good company. This is the magic of the medieval tavern, a place where, for a few precious hours each day, the cares of the world can be forgotten and the bonds of friendship and community reaffirmed. And it's a magic that, thanks to the tireless efforts of people like William, will endure long after the last tankard is drained and the last story told. As the script comes to a close, listeners are left with a warm sense of contentment and peace, a feeling not unlike that of the weary traveller, well fed and well rested, ready to face whatever the new day may bring. The tavern, and all it represents, will be there waiting, a constant source of comfort and companionship in an ever-changing world. As the evening wears on, the tavern takes on a different character. The boisterous energy of earlier slowly gives way to a more intimate atmosphere. Candles burn low, casting a warm, flickering glow over the remaining patrons. The fire in the hearth has died down to softly glowing embers, lending a cozy, almost drowsy air to the room. At a corner table, two young villagers sit huddled together in quiet conversation. The young man, a carpenter's apprentice named Richard, nervously fidgets with his mug as he sneaks glances at the pretty girl across from him. Margaret, the miller's daughter, blushes and smiles shyly back at him. They've known each other since childhood, but only recently have their feelings blossomed into something more. In the tavern's relaxed, convivial atmosphere, away from the prying eyes of gossiping neighbours, they finally feel at ease to talk and dream of a future together. As William makes his rounds of the room, collecting empty tankards and plates, he can't help but smile at the young couple, lost in their own little world. Ah, young love. He remembers his own courtship with his dear wife Anne, God rest her soul. Many a happy hour they spent together in this very tavern, back when William's father ran things. The old tavern has seen its share of budding romances over the years, not to mention its fair share of lovers' quarrels and tearful reconciliations. William's reverie is interrupted by a loud snore from a corner where old Thomas, the village tanner, has nodded off over his ale. The man's bushy grey head is slumped on the table, one gnarled hand still clutching his empty mug. William shakes his head with a rueful chuckle. Old Thomas is a fixture here, has been for as long as anyone can remember. He's usually one of the last to leave, staggering home in the wee hours to sleep it off before another day's work at the tannery. As William gently shakes the old man awake and sends him on his way, he reflects on all the familiar faces that have passed through these doors over the years. In a way, they're all like family to him. He's watched many of them grow up, shared in their joys and sorrows, celebrated their milestones, and mourned their losses. The tavern is so much more than just a place to eat and drink. It's the heart of the community, where lives intersect and memories are made. Caught up in his thoughts, William barely notices the late hour until one of the serving girls, yawning, reaches for her shawl. The poor lass looks dead on her feet after a long day's work. William dismisses her with a kind smile and a gentle reminder not to forget her share of the day's tips. He'll finish the last of the cleaning himself. As the girl slips gratefully out into the night, William turns his attention to the few remaining stragglers nursing their final drinks. He moves quietly among the tables, tactfully encouraging the drowsy patrons to finish up. "Time to be heading home, lads," he murmurs, not unkindly. "The wife will be missing you." One by one, the men drain their mugs and lumber to their feet, gathering cloaks and hats and bidding their good nights. Gradually, the low hum of conversation dwindles to silence, replaced by the soft crackling of the banked fire and the distant hooting of an owl outside. Alone in the tavern now, William methodically goes about the familiar tasks of closing up for the night. He collects the last few tankards and trenchers, giving the tables a final wipe with a damp cloth. He checks that the windows are securely shuttered against the night's chill. Finally, he shovels a layer of ash over the glowing embers in the hearth, banking the fire to keep it alive till morning. As he climbs the narrow wooden stairs to his own bed in the loft above, William pauses to cast one last look around the darkened tavern. In the hush of midnight, the old place almost seems to slumber, resting up for another lively day ahead. For a moment, William can almost feel the weight of generations, of all the lives and stories these walls have sheltered over the long years. With a small, contented sigh, the tavern keeper turns away and makes his way up to bed. Another day is done, but tomorrow the tavern doors will open again. The fire will roar back to life in the hearth. The stools and benches will fill up with friendly faces, both old and new. Drinks will flow, laughter will ring out, and the old stories will be told again. Because whatever else may change in this uncertain world, there will always be a need for a place like this. A place of warmth and welcome, where weary souls can gather to share a meal, a song, and a bit of human fellowship. And as long as there's a need, William will be here to open the doors of the drunken boar, just as his father did before him. As the tavern keeper drifts off to a well-earned rest, the embers glow softly in the hearth below, keeping the darkness at bay till morning. Outside, the village lies still and silent under a canopy of stars, resting in the peace of the night. But soon enough, a new day will dawn, and with it, another bustling, boisterous, utterly ordinary evening at the local tavern. The sleepy little village may not make the history books, but here, in the flickering candlelight and the laughter-warmed air of the alehouse, the stuff of real life plays out. The dreams and disappointments, the loves and losses that make up the warp and weft of human existence. And that perhaps is a kind of history too. The clinking of tankards and the murmur of conversation greet you as you step inside the tavern, enveloped by the warm glow of the candlelit interior. The earthy scent of wood smoke mingles with the aroma of roasting meat, and your eyes adjust to the flickering light as you take in the convivial scene before you. At the center of it all stands William, the tavern keeper, a stout, genial man with a ruddy complexion and a twinkle in his eye. He looks up from wiping a pewter mug with a well-worn cloth and gives you a welcoming nod. "Good evening, traveller," he says with a smile. Come in. Rest your weary feet by the hearth and let us pour you a draught of our finest ale." As you make your way towards the bar, weaving between the long trestle tables packed with patrons, William sets down the mug and leans forward, his elbows on the worn oak counter. "Welcome to the 7 Stars," he says, gesturing around at the lively taproom. "My father opened this tavern when I was just a lad, and I've been running it ever since he passed some 20 years ago now." You can tell that William takes great pride in his establishment. From the well-tended hearth to the gleaming tankards hanging in neat rows above the bar. He has an easy rapport with his patrons, greeting regulars by name and inquiring after their families and trades. As William pours you a foaming mug of ale, he nods towards a group of men huddled around one of the tables, their faces illuminated by the dancing firelight. "That there's John the blacksmith," he says, pointing out a burly, soot-streaked man with massive hands wrapped around his tankard. "He's been coming here every night for a pint after working at the forge all day, for as long as I can remember." Next to John sits a wiry, balding man with a dusting of flour on his tunic, whom William identifies as Thomas the baker. The two men are engaged in a lively conversation, their voices rising and falling with the ebb and flow of the tavern's chatter. As you sip your ale, savouring its rich, malty flavour, you let your gaze wander around the room, taking in the eclectic mix of patrons. In one corner, a group of weathered farmers sit nursing their drinks, their sun-beaten faces creased with laughter as they swap stories of the day's toil in the fields. Nearby, a pair of well-dressed merchants are deep in negotiation, their heads bent together over a sheaf of papers spread out on the table between them. The tavern is simply furnished but comfortable, with sturdy wooden benches flanking the long tables and a few stools scattered around the hearth for those seeking a bit of warmth on a chilly evening. The walls are adorned with colourful tapestries depicting scenes of hunts and harvests, their vibrant threads faded but still rich with detail. As the night wears on, the tavern grows more boisterous, with laughter and snatches of song floating up to the rafters. A group of young men have struck up a lively game of dice in one corner, their shouts of triumph and groans of disappointment punctuating the general hubbub. William presides over it all with a watchful eye, occasionally stepping out from behind the bar to break up a heated argument or lend a steadying hand to a patron who's had a bit too much to drink. He seems to know everyone's name and story, from the old widow who comes in every week for a quiet cup of cider, to the boisterous young apprentices who descend on the tavern on their rare evenings off. As you drain the last of your ale, you find yourself marveling at the sense of community that pervades the Seven Stars. In a world where life is often harsh and unforgiving, the tavern serves as a beacon of warmth and fellowship, a place where people can come together to share their joys and sorrows over a mug of something strong and satisfying. You're shaken from your reverie by a sudden burst of laughter from a nearby table, where a red-faced man is regaling his companions with a bawdy tale, his hands gesturing wildly as he speaks. William catches your eye and gives you a knowing smile, as if to say, "Just another night at the Seven Stars." As the hour grows late, you find yourself stifling a yawn, the combination of the hearty ale and the tavern's cozy atmosphere conspiring to make your eyelids heavy. You signal to William for one last mug before heading up to your rented room, a humble but tidy chamber with a straw-stuffed mattress and a small window overlooking the sleeping village. As you climb the narrow staircase, the sounds of merriment fade behind you, replaced by the creak of ancient wooden boards beneath your feet. You can't help but feel a pang of gratitude for the simple comforts of the Seven Stars and for the welcoming presence of William and his loyal patrons. You drift off to sleep with a smile on your lips, your mind full of the colourful characters and lively scenes you've witnessed over the course of the evening. And as you slip into dreams, you can almost hear the clink of tankards and the murmur of companionable voices rising up from the taproom below, a comforting reminder of the enduring spirit of the medieval tavern. As the first light of dawn begins to filter through the small window of your rented room, you stir from a deep and restful slumber. The sounds of the tavern below are muted now, replaced by the distant crowing of a rooster and the gentle clatter of a kitchen coming to life. You dress quickly and make your way downstairs, pausing for a moment to savour the quiet hush of the taproom in the early morning light. The long tables have been wiped clean, the benches neatly tucked beneath them, and the hearth has been swept of ashes, ready for a new day of warmth and cheer. As you step into the kitchen, you find William already hard at work, kneading a large batch of dough for the day's bread. He looks up as you enter and gives you a warm smile. "Ah, good morning," he says, dusting his hands off on his apron. "I trust you slept well." You nod, returning his smile. "Like a log," you say. "Your beds are as comfortable as your ale is strong." William chuckles, clearly pleased by the compliment. "Well, we do our best to make sure our guests are well rested and well fed," he says. "Speaking of which, can I interest you in some breakfast? We've got fresh eggs, sausages, and a loaf of my wife's famous honey bread, still warm from the oven." Your stomach rumbles in response, and you nod eagerly. "That sounds wonderful," you say. "Thank you." As William busies himself with preparing your meal, you take a seat at the kitchen table and watch him work, marveling at the skill and efficiency with which he moves around the small space. It's clear that he takes great pride in his craft, whether it's pouring the perfect pint or frying up a hearty breakfast. Over the next few minutes, the kitchen fills with the mouth-watering aroma of sizzling sausages and fresh-baked bread, and you find yourself practically salivating in anticipation. When William sets a heaping plate down in front of you, complete with a mug of steaming cider, you can't help but let out a contented sigh. "This looks amazing," you say, picking up your fork. "Thank you again for your hospitality." William waves off your thanks with a smile. "It's my pleasure," he says. "A good meal is the least I can offer after a night of good company and conversation." As you dig into your breakfast, savouring each delicious bite, you find yourself reflecting on the unique role that taverns like the Seven Stars play in medieval society. More than just a place to eat and drink, they serve as vital hubs of social interaction, where people from all walks of life can come together to share news, swap stories, and forge bonds of friendship and community. In a world where travel is often slow and arduous, and communication is limited to the speed of a horse or a ship, taverns are the great equalizers, providing a space for people to connect across the boundaries of class and geography. Whether you're a humble farmer or a wealthy merchant, a local tradesman or a foreign traveller, you can find a warm welcome and a sense of belonging within the walls of a tavern. As you finish the last of your breakfast and drain your mug of cider, you feel a renewed appreciation for the simple pleasures of life in a medieval village. The food, the drink, the companionship. These are the things that make the hardships of the era bearable, the things that remind us of our shared humanity and the enduring power of community. You stand up from the table, your belly full and your heart warmed by the hospitality of William and the Seven Stars. As you bid him farewell and step out into the bright morning sunlight, you carry with you a sense of connection to the people and the place, a feeling of having been a part of something timeless and true. And as you set off down the winding road, the laughter and the clinking of tankards fading behind you, you know that you'll always carry a piece of the Seven Stars with you, a reminder of the simple joys and the enduring spirit of the medieval tavern. As the village settles into slumber, let us return once more to the drowsy tavern, where only the soft crackling of embers breaks the hush. William sits at a table, tankard in hand, savouring a quiet moment after the bustle of the day. The dancing shadows cast by the dying fire seem to whisper of all the lives that have passed through these walls. The tavern has stood at the crossroads of the village for as long as anyone can remember, a beacon of warmth, a refuge from the uncertainties of a harsh world beyond. Within its sturdy timber frame, William and those before him have borne witness to a kaleidoscope of human experience. Laughter and tears, triumphs and sorrows, deals struck, tales spun, bonds forged. Through the years, William has played his part in the age-old rituals of hospitality, the alchemy of turning simple victuals and brew into sustenance for both body and soul. He takes pride in keeping a clean hearth and a well-thatched roof, in offering a listening ear and a steady hand to any soul in need. As much a keeper of memories as a keeper of tankards, William's mind wanders to some of the more colourful characters to have graced his tavern. There was old Geoffrey the storyteller, who could spin a yarn that would leave the whole room spellbound, his sightless eyes twinkling as if beholding wonders. Legends grew up around the enigmatic traveller. Some claimed he had been a knight in his youth, others a court jester or even a sorcerer. But to William, he was simply a good friend, quick with a jest to lift the spirits on a gloomy day. Then there was Meg, the wise woman from the edge of the village who came in one blustery eve, seeking shelter from a storm. Over a mug of mulled wine, she traded knowledge of herb lore with William, showing him how to brew a posset to chase away winter chills. From that night on, she would visit any time she had need of company, and William made sure to always keep a store of her favourite dried apples on hand. William's ruminations turned to the motley troupe of travelling players who had once spent a week at the tavern, delighting the village with their antics. He chuckles, recalling how the lead actor had taken a shine to the blacksmith's daughter, much to her father's consternation. Ah, springtime, and its heady mix of ale, acrobatics, and amour. For years after, patrons would chuckle over pints about the unlikely couple's midnight trysts in the hayloft. But William has also seen how quickly merriment can turn to sorrow. He remembers the ashen faces of the villagers as they huddled in the tavern that black day when the blight struck the fields, leaving only withered stalks. How they had all leaned on each other for strength, pooling what scant food they had, the tavern's stores becoming a bulwark against starvation. Even in the darkest times, William strove to keep a light burning, to maintain that fragile haven of fellowship and good cheer. And it was all worth it for the golden moments, the wedding feasts, the harvest celebrations, the simple comfort of a shared meal, and a rousing song at the end of a weary day. Lost in his reverie, William hardly notices the guttering of the last candle, the tavern falling into shadow. With a wistful sigh, he levers himself up from the bench and slowly climbs the narrow stair to his pallet. Tomorrow would bring its own labours and festivities, its own stories to add to the tapestry of tavern lore. As William settles into sleep, the tavern dreams on around him, steeped in the laughter and tears of generations. And somewhere in the village, a newborn babe mewls in its crib, dreaming perhaps of a distant day when it too will push open that weathered door and cross the threshold into the beating heart of it all. The medieval tavern, that glorious theatre of the human drama, in all its joy and sorrow and raucous, unquenchable life. The tavern keeper's reminiscences continue as the night grows late and the crowd begins to dwindle. William's eyes twinkle with mirth as he recalls a particularly memorable evening from years past. I'll never forget the night that pompous nobleman stumbled in, already deep in his cups. William chuckles softly, leaning an elbow on the worn oak bar. Lord What's-his-name, can't quite recall, you know how it is with those titled folk. Anyway, he comes swaggering up, demanding our finest vintage and a room for the night. Now, we may be a humble establishment, but we do pride ourselves on hospitality. So I set him up with a cosy bed and a flagon of our best ale. William shakes his head, smiling at the memory. Well, not an hour later, the lord's back downstairs, red-faced and roaring about the intolerable conditions and inedible swill we'd had the gall to serve him. He's causing quite the scene, waving his arms about, knocking over tankards left and right. Poor fellow could barely stand. The tavern keeper's eyes crinkle with amusement. Finally, he demands to see the proprietor, that's me of course, to give me a piece of his noble mind. So I come out, calm as you please, and ask how I can be of assistance. Well, the nobleman puffs up like an angry rooster and launches into a long-winded tirade about the shoddy service, the lumpy mattress, the ale that tastes like horse. William trails off, chuckling. I let him go on for a bit, then gently remind him that he's not in his fancy manor house now. This here's a tavern, and a damned fine one at that. Told him if the accommodations aren't to his lordly liking, he's welcome to take his coin and his attitude elsewhere. I thought the old bugger was going to have a fit of apoplexy right then and there, but he just deflates, like a puffed up bladder someone's let the air out of, mumbles some half-hearted apology and slinks back to his room with his tail between his legs. William mimes a defeated slouch, eyes sparkling. Never did see him again after that night, probably too embarrassed to show his face round here anymore. The tavern keeper guffaws, slapping his palm on the stout wooden bar. The arrogance of some folks. Think a fancy title means they can lord it over hard-working common folk. Not in my establishment, no sir. William smiles, then grows reflective. You know, in all my years running this place, I've seen all sorts come through those doors. High and low, rich and poor. And let me tell you, a man's true character has naught to do with the coins in his purse or the crest on his shield. It's how he treats his fellow man, aye, and woman too. That shows the measure of him. I've seen ragged beggars share their last crust with a hungry child, and wealthy merchants sneer at the very servants who fill their cups. I've seen soldiers fresh from the battlefield cry into their ale as the memories haunt them. and I've seen minstrels coax smiles from even the most dour faces with their ribald tunes. All are welcome under my roof, so long as they pay their tab and mind their manners. William chuckles again, softer now. He glances around at the few remaining patrons nursing their drinks. "Ah, listen to me ramble on. You'd think I was the one in my cups tonight." He smiles ruefully, running a hand over his balding pate. "But I do get sentimental, thinking back on all the stories these walls could tell. The laughter and the tears, the fights and the friendships. If there's one thing I've learned in all my time as tavern keeper, it's that everyone's got a story, and most are eager to share it, given an open ear and an open heart." The tavern keeper lapses into thoughtful silence for a moment, absently polishing the bar with a stained rag. The low murmur of conversation hums beneath the crackling of the banked fire. Shadows flicker across the walls like dancing spectres of centuries past. William straightens up with a sigh, his gaze soft and distant. "I've been blessed, I have, to be a small part of so many stories over the years, to provide a bit of warmth and welcome in this hard world, even if only for a night. It's a legacy I'm proud to leave when my own story finally comes to a close." The tavern keeper smiles gently, then shakes himself, the wistful moment broken. He glances at the hourglass on the shelf, noting the dwindling sand. The fire burns low, little more than softly glowing embers now. It's time to start ushering the stragglers out into the night. Morning will come all too soon, and with it another day of stories waiting to unfold within these ancient walls. Such is the cycle of life in a medieval tavern, where history both great and small is forever in the making. William takes up his rag once more and moves out from behind the bar, ready to bid his patrons a fond good night. The low rumble of his voice carries across the room as he cajoles and chivies, not unkindly. Snatches of conversation drift on the air, a teasing reminder to settle a tab, a half-hearted grumble in response, the scrape of a bench against the rushes as a patron rises unsteadily to his feet. Slowly but surely, the common room empties out. Yawning patrons don't their cloaks and head for the door, calling goodnights over their shoulders. William follows the last one out, closing the door firmly against the chill night air. He stands for a moment on the stoop, breathing in the crisp scent of early autumn. The village lies sleeping, not a sound save for the distant hooting of an owl. Windows wink out one by one as candles are snuffed for the night. With a last look at the peaceful scene, William turns and heads back inside, leaving the door unbarred for any late arrivals seeking shelter. He banks the fire, watching as the flames settle into softly pulsing embers. A quick circuit of the room to collect stray mugs and set the benches to rights, and he's done for the night. With a satisfied sigh, the tavern keeper heads for the narrow stairs leading up to his own humble quarters. His footsteps creak on the aged wood, a comfortingly familiar sound. At the top of the stairs he pauses, looking back down over the slumbering tavern. In the hush, it's almost possible to hear the echoes of centuries' worth of laughter and chatter trapped within the thick beams. The ghosts of 1,000 stories linger in the air, waiting for the dawn to breathe them back to life once more. William smiles, his heart full. Then he turns away, leaving the tavern to its dreams of bygone days and tales yet untold. The door to his room closes softly behind him, and silence settles like a blanket over the sleeping world. In a few short hours, the cycle will begin anew, as it has for generations. As it will, God's willing, for many generations yet to come. The tavern sleeps, and history slumbers with it, woven into the very fabric of its walls. The keeper of its law and its hospitality rests too, knowing his own small part will be waiting come the morn. For what is a tavern keeper if not the tender of 1,000 tales, the keeper of a community's beating heart? With that comforting thought, William drifts off to dream of peaceful nights and the promise of new stories waiting with the sunrise. As the evening wore on, the tavern's convivial atmosphere only grew warmer and more spirited. The fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting a dance of flickering light and shadow across the faces of the patrons. Laughter rang out as jokes were told and stories were shared, punctuated by the clinking of tankards and the occasional burst of raucous singing. Through it all, William moved among his guests with the easy grace of a man well versed in the art of hospitality. He made sure that no mug stayed empty for long, topping off drinks with a steady hand and a smile. When a group of travelling merchants called for a round of his famous meat pies, he disappeared into the kitchen and emerged moments later with a tray laden with steaming, golden-crusted pastries. As the merchants tucked into their meal, they regaled the room with tales of their latest journey, a perilous trek over the mountains, braving treacherous passes and icy winds to bring their wares to market. They spoke of exotic spices and gleaming silks, of strange customs in faraway lands. The other patrons listened with rapt attention, their imaginations sparked by these glimpses of a wider world beyond the familiar confines of their village. Among the merchants was a grizzled old man named Bartholomew, whose weathered face spoke of a life spent largely on the road. Though his clothes were travel-stained and his beard unkempt, there was a glint of mischief in his eye as he leaned forward conspiratorially, launching into a tale of a haunted inn he'd stayed at on the outskirts of a distant city. As Bartholomew wove his ghostly yarn, a hush fell over the tavern. Even the most boisterous of the patrons found themselves drawn in, leaning closer to catch every word. He told of eerie whispers in the night, of footsteps creaking on floorboards where no one tread, of a pale figure glimpsed in the moonlight through a window. Some listeners shivered deliciously at the spooky details, while others eyed the shadows warily, half convinced that spectres lurked there. With a theatrical flourish, Bartholomew reached the climax of his story, a terrifying encounter with the restless spirit of a murdered innkeeper. There were gasps and a few nervous titters from around the room. Then, just as the tension reached its peak, he delivered the punchline with a roguish grin, revealing that the ghost had merely been a mischievous stable boy playing a prank. The tavern erupted with surprised laughter and good-natured groans, the spell of the story broken. As the mirth died down, a woman's voice rose above the clamour to ask Bartholomew if all of his stories were so full of twists and tall tales. Eyes twinkling, the old merchant raised his mug in a salute. "Ah, my lady," he said. "What would be the fun in a story where all is exactly as it seems? The world is full of wonders, and sometimes the greatest magic lies in a bit of well-spun mischief." This sparked a lively discussion among the gathered patrons about the role of stories in their lives. Some spoke of the comfort to be found in familiar fables passed down through generations, while others praised the excitement of hearing something new and unexpected. A few of the more philosophical sorts mused on how stories allowed them to step outside the bounds of their own experience, to imagine different ways of being. Through it all, William watched and listened, a small smile playing about his lips. He knew well the power of a good tale to lift spirits and bring folk together. It was just one of the many small magics that made a tavern like his so vital to the life of a community. A place where people could leave their cares at the door for a while and lose themselves in laughter, in song, in flights of fancy. As the night grew older and the candles burned lower, the crowd began to thin as patrons drifted off into the darkness towards their beds. A few stalwarts lingered, nursing their drinks and swapping drowsy jokes in the dying firelight. Gradually, a peaceful hush stole over the tavern, broken only by the soft murmur of voices, the creak of wooden beams, the occasional pop from the hearth. William moved quietly through the room, collecting empty mugs and plates, gently coaxing the stragglers to settle their tabs and make their way homeward. He knew that come morning, the cycle would begin anew. The fire would be built up, the floors swept clean, bread would be baked, and ale barrels tapped in preparation for another day of companionship, commiseration, and cheer. For now, though, as he bolted the door and dimmed the lamps, the tavern keeper allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. It had been a good night, full of the warmth and fellowship that made his life's work so deeply fulfilling. As he climbed the narrow stairs to his own bed, he offered a silent word of thanks for the small, sturdy haven he'd built here, and for the community that gathered beneath its roof to share in the simple, timeless pleasures of good drink, good food, and good company at the end of a long day. The tavern slept, but morning would come, as it always did, and with it, another chance to welcome friends old and new across the threshold into the warm embrace of the hearth. Such was the enduring rhythm of the medieval tavern, the beating heart of village life, a place of respite, of fellowship, of shared stories and shared humanity, where the travails of the world could be forgotten for a few precious hours in the glow of the fire and the laughter of kindred spirits. As the night grows late and the crowd begins to thin, a few stalwart patrons remain huddled around the glowing embers of the hearth, their faces illuminated by the dying firelight. Among them are two shy young villagers, seated in a quiet corner, their heads bent close in intimate conversation. The young man, a farmer's son named Edward, nervously fiddles with his emptied mug as he sneaks glances at the pretty girl beside him. Her name is Margaret, the daughter of the local weaver, and her cheeks are flushed to becoming pink, though whether from the warmth of the fire or the attention of her companion, one cannot say. They speak in hushed tones, their words punctuated by the occasional giggle or shared smile. To watch the budding romance unfold is to be transported back to one's own youthful fancies and first flirtations. Though Edward and Margaret have known each other since childhood, this is perhaps the first time they've truly seen one another in a new light. As the two become lost in their own little world, William the tavern keeper looks on from behind the bar with a knowing smile. Ah, to be young and in love. He's seen countless courtships play out within these walls over the years, and he can't help but feel a swell of fondness for the sweet young couple. But the hour is growing late, and there are still duties to attend to before the tavern can be shuttered for the night. William begins to make his rounds, collecting empty tankards and plates, and gently urging the remaining patrons to finish their drinks. He stops to chat with John the blacksmith and Thomas the baker, who are engaged in a spirited debate over the merits of a new type of plough that John is smithing. It's a conversation that could likely go on until sunrise, but William tactfully reminds them of the lateness of the hour and the wives waiting for them at home. As John and Thomas drain the last dregs from their mugs and bid William a good night, the tavern keeper turns his attention to banking the fire. He shovels ashes over the glowing coals, ensuring that no stray spark could ignite once the tavern is closed up. Meanwhile, the serving wenches are busy wiping down the tables and sweeping rushes from the floor, tidying up the detritus of the day. It's hard work running a tavern, with long hours and few breaks, but there's a certain satisfaction in a job well done at the end of the night. As the last patrons finally take their leave, William does a final walkthrough of the tavern, checking that the windows are shuttered tight and the door is securely bolted. He climbs the narrow staircase to the modest chamber he calls home, the small room illuminated by a single flickering tallow candle. Settling down on the edge of his straw mattress, William allows his mind to wander back over the events of the day. It's been a good night, with a steady stream of patrons and no major troubles to speak of. He thinks of the mysterious hooded stranger still ensconced in one of the rented rooms and wonders what business has brought the man to their humble village. But such ponderings will have to wait for morning. For now, William extinguishes his candle and settles beneath the woolen blanket, the comforting sounds of the slumbering village lulling him into a contented sleep. Outside, The once lively village streets now lie empty and silent, save for the occasional howl of a distant dog or hoot of a hunting owl. One by one, the lit windows of the tavern and surrounding cottages wink out like fireflies until only the silver glow of the moon remains to bathe the thatched roofs and cobbled paths in a spectral light. It's a scene that has played out countless times over the centuries, this sleepy dance of life in a medieval village. The tavern has been the stage upon which so many dramas have unfolded. Love and loss, laughter and tears, the full spectrum of human experience. These are the memories that seem to echo in the hush of the night, whispering from the ancient timbers and well-worn flagstones. One can almost imagine the shades of long-ago patrons still gathered around the dark hearth, raising a final toast to lives well lived. And so the tavern sleeps, resting up for yet another day and another story. For that is the magic of these humble establishments. They are more than mere alehouses and inns. They are the keepers of a community's collective memory, the heart and soul of a people. As long as there are taverns like William's, with their warm hearths and warmer welcomes, the simple folkways of medieval life will endure. The names and faces may change with the passing years, but the laughter and fellowship, the sharing of news and the spinning of tales, those are constants as old as time itself. So let us raise a glass to the medieval tavern, that unsung hero of history. And as we drift off to sleep, let our dreams carry us back to a simpler time, when the whole world could be found within its weathered walls. To William the tavern keeper, and all those like him, we bid you good night and sweet dreams until the morrow. Thus ends our sojourn into the world of the medieval tavern, a journey both through history and the human heart. May its warmth and cheer light our way, even as we return to the waking world of our own time. And may we carry with us always a piece of that simple wisdom, which seems to dwell eternally in its ancient rafters. That in the end, it is not the grandest palaces nor the most glittering riches that make a life well lived, but rather it is the humbler gifts, a roof overhead, a fire to warm us, and the companionship of our fellow travelers on this brief journey we call life. For those are the true treasures, more precious than gold, the ones that light our way home at the end of even the darkest night. Good night, dear listeners. May your sleep be deep and your dreams be sweet, and may the comforting hum of history's tapestry wind its way through your slumbering mind. Until next time, farewell. As the night wears on, the once boisterous tavern settles into a more intimate atmosphere. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the handful of patrons still lingering at the tables. William, ever the attentive host, makes his rounds, checking on his guests and making sure their cups are filled. In a quiet corner, two young villagers sit huddled together, their heads bowed in close conversation. The boy, a young farmhand named Edward, fidgets nervously with his mug as he sneaks glances at the pretty girl beside him. Her name is Margaret, the daughter of the local weaver, and she blushes shyly under his gaze. They've seen each other around the village for years, but tonight, emboldened perhaps by the ale and the convivial atmosphere, Edward finally worked up the courage to approach her. As the two young lovebirds whisper and laugh softly together, William can't help but smile to himself. He's seen countless romances blossom within these walls over the years. There's just something about the warm, inviting ambiance of the tavern that seems to bring people together, to forge connections and spark new beginnings. But as much as William enjoys playing matchmaker, he knows it's getting late, and he has a long day ahead of him tomorrow. Slowly, he begins making his way around the room, gently reminding the remaining patrons that it's nearly closing time. "All right, folks, time to finish up your drinks," he calls out good-naturedly. "You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here." A few good-natured grumbles and protestations arise from the stalwart few still clustered around the tables, but they obediently drain their cups and start gathering their things. William moves through the room, collecting empty mugs and plates and banking the fire for the night. As the last patrons trickle out into the cool night air, William stands at the door, bidding them farewell. He watches as they wobble off into the darkness, some arm in arm, others still singing snatches of bawdy tunes under their breath. Edward and Margaret linger a moment longer, their hands entwined, before reluctantly parting ways with a final, bashful smile. William chuckles to himself as he closes the heavy wooden door, shutting out the night. He looks around at the empty tavern, taking in the scattered rushes on the floor, the tipped-over stools, the half-finished mugs of ale. It's a mess, to be sure, but it's a beautiful mess. A mess that tells the story of a night well spent, of laughter and camaraderie, and the simple joys of being alive. As he moves through the space, straightening furniture and wiping down tables, William reflects on the role his tavern plays in the life of this little village. It's more than just a place to drink and eat and sleep. It's a gathering place, a hub of community and connection. Within these walls, neighbors become friends, strangers become family. Stories are told, bonds are forged, lives are changed. For William, being a tavern keeper is more than just a job. It's a calling, a sacred trust passed down from his father and his father before him. He takes pride in creating a space where people can come together, leave their troubles at the door, and find a little bit of light in the darkness. As he climbs the narrow stairs to his own humble quarters above the tavern, William pauses to glance out a small window. The village is dark and still, the streets empty save for a stray dog nosing through the rubbish. But here and there, a few faint glimmers of candlelight still flicker behind shuttered windows. The tavern may be closed for the night, but its warmth lingers on in the hearts and homes of the people it serves. With a contented sigh, William turns away from the window and heads to bed. Tomorrow will bring new faces, new stories, new challenges and triumphs. But for now, he'll rest easy knowing that his tavern will be there to welcome them all, just as it always has been. A constant, comforting presence in an ever-changing world. A place to call home, even for just a little while. As William drifts off to sleep, the tavern settles into its own slumber around him. The embers glow softly in the hearth. The beams creak and sigh in the stillness. And outside, the night wraps the little village in its dark, quiet embrace, holding it fast until the dawn comes around once more, and with it, the promise of a new day. As the flicker of candles and rush lights cast a warm glow over the worn wooden beams, the tavern takes on a cozy, intimate ambience. William makes his rounds, stopping at tables to top off tankards and inquire after his guests. His deep, rumbling laugh mingles with the cheerful din as he shares jests and commiserations with the regulars. Though William puts on an affable air, he maintains a watchful eye for any signs of trouble brewing. Taverns, after all, could be rowdy places where tempers flared as freely as the ale flowed. Just the other night, a heated argument broke out between two farmhands over a dice game. Voices raised and stools scraped back as the men squared off, fists clenched. But William, ever the consummate host, swiftly intervened. He planted his broad frame between the would-be brawlers and diffused the situation with a few well-chosen words and a round on the house. Such was the delicate balance a skilled tavern keeper must strike, cultivating a welcoming atmosphere of camaraderie and levity, while reining in the unruly side of human nature that drink could unleash. William had learned this tightrope act at the knee of his father, a respected pillar of the community who had run the tavern for as long as anyone could remember. William could still picture him in his mind's eye, a head of thick silver hair, a neatly trimmed beard, an apron cinched around his ample waist. He had an uncanny knack for sensing when a patron needed an ear to bend or a kind word of encouragement. The tavern keeper is part father confessor, part jester, and part peacekeeper, he would say, clapping a young William on the shoulder. Get the proportions right, and you'll never want for custom. Under his tutelage, William absorbed the many unwritten rules of tavern keeping. Always greet guests with a smile, no matter how weary you feel. Keep the hearth well stoked and the rushes fresh. Never let the food run low or the drink run dry. And above all, cultivate an air of discreet discretion. The tavern was a place where people came to unburden themselves, to let down their guard and speak freely without fear of judgment or gossip. What was said within these walls stayed within these walls. As William circulates, he takes note of the little dramas playing out in every corner. By the hearth, John the blacksmith holds court, regaling a group with tales of his exploits in the last Harvest Festival wrestling match. His brawny arms gesture expansively as he describes grappling with his rival, the boos and cheers of the crowd ringing in his ears. At a table nearby, Thomas the baker huddles in close conversation with a hooded man, their voices low and urgent. No doubt haggling over the price of flour or the finer points of bread making. William muses with a wry smile. His gaze falls on a cluster of serving wenches, their skirts swishing as they weave between the tables with trays of steaming savoury pies and rounds of cheese. The tavern's offerings are simple but hearty, designed to line the stomach and soak up the copious amounts of drink. There's mulled wine for those seeking to chase away the chill, and cider for those with a taste for something crisp and sweet. But the true lifeblood of the tavern is the ale, rich, foamy and brewed in great oaken barrels in the storeroom. William takes pride in the quality of his brew, which enjoys a reputation as the finest for miles around. Brewed from top-quality malted barley and flavoured with fragrant hops, it strikes the perfect balance between robustness and smoothness. The secret, he knows, is in the water, drawn from a sacred spring said to have miraculous properties. William puts little stock in such superstitions, but he can't deny that it lends a certain mystique to the ale that keeps patrons coming back for more. As the night wears on, the tavern seems to expand and contract like a living, breathing entity. Lulls of murmured conversation give way to raucous laughter and snatches of song. A duo of wandering minstrels strikes up a jaunty tune in the corner, sending a few bold couples spinning and reeling across the rush-strewn floor. William looks on with an indulgent smile, remembering the nights he would twirl his own fair maiden around this very room in the bloom of their youth. For the tavern has borne witness to many of life's milestones and passages. It's here that neighbours come to toast a new marriage or wet the head of a newborn babe. It's here that greybeards gather to raise a parting glass to an old friend laid to rest. And it's here, in the hazy space between joy and sorrow, that the bonds of community are forged and renewed. The tavern is the great equalizer, a place where the lines between lord and peasant blur and all are united by the basic human need for fellowship and good cheer. Suddenly, a hush falls over the room, and all eyes turn to the cloaked figure rising to his feet in the corner. He has the careworn look of a man who has travelled far and seen much. In a rich, resonant voice that fills the room, he begins to unspool a mesmerising tale of his adventures in a distant land across the sea, where the spires of great cities rise to dizzying heights and strange beasts roam the perfumed jungles. The tavern-goers listen in rapt attention, their tankards frozen halfway to their lips, as he describes a harrowing voyage beset by towering waves and lashed by howling winds. William realises with a start that he has been holding his breath, so caught up is he in the spell the storyteller weaves. He exhales slowly, marvelling at the power of a well-told tale to transport one beyond the confines of their everyday existence. This too is part of the magic of the tavern, the way it becomes a portal to a wider world, a place where the boundaries of the possible expand and the horizon stretches out endlessly. As the storyteller's voice finally falls silent, the trance is broken, and the room erupts into applause and cries of appreciation. Coins clink into his upturned cap as the patrons show their gratitude the best way they know how. William catches the man's eye across the room and nods his respect. They are kindred spirits, in a way, both in the business of providing succor and escape, nourishment for the body and the soul. The hour grows late, and one by one, the patrons settle their tabs and take their leave, trickling out into the chill night air. The minstrels pack up their instruments, the barmaids clear the last of the trenchers and tankards. William banks the fire and gives the room a final once-over, savouring the familiar hush that settles over the tavern in these small, dark hours. The ghosts of 1,000 nights just like this one seem to linger in the air, the laughter and tears and clinking of glasses echoing across the centuries. For William knows that he is just the latest in a long line of keepers, tending the flame of this ancient hallowed space, just as his father did before him, and his father before that. The tavern is a constant in an inconstant world, a bulwark against the buffeting winds of change. It will be here long after he is gone, offering up its humble comforts and stalwart companionship to generations yet to come. And there is both a solace and a sense of solemn duty in that knowledge. With a final, watchful circuit of the room and a nod of satisfaction, William snuffs out the last guttering candle. He climbs the narrow staircase to his modest living quarters above, the risers creaking beneath his feet. Tomorrow will bring its own labours and rewards, its own cast of characters and chronicles. But for now, there is only the deep, enveloping peace of a day well lived and a duty faithfully discharged. As he sinks into the embrace of sleep, William's dreams are filled with the sounds and scents of his beloved tavern, the crackling of the hearth, the malty sweetness of new ale, the murmur of voices sharing in life's simple joys. It is, in the end, all he has ever really needed, all any of us need perhaps, in this brief and precious dance of being human. The flickering glow of the tavern's hearth dances across William's face as he takes a moment to rest his weary feet. The low murmur of the few remaining patrons a familiar and comforting sound. It's been a long night, but a good one. The tavern saw its share of laughter, heated debates, and even a few tears as tankards were raised in both merriment and remembrance. William's mind wanders back to some of the countless evenings he spent within these walls, each one adding another thread to the rich tapestry of stories that make up the tavern's history. As he often does in these quiet moments, William thinks back to the night he took over the tavern from his father, nearly 20 years ago now. He remembers the pride in the old man's eyes as he handed over the keys, the weight of responsibility settling on William's shoulders as he accepted the role of keeper of this bastion of community life. In the years since, William has come to understand just how much the tavern means to the village and its people. It's not just a place to drink and eat, but a sanctuary from the toils of daily life. A place where neighbours become friends and strangers become family. William's reverie is interrupted by the creak of the tavern door, and he looks up to see a cloaked figure slipping out into the night. It's the mysterious traveller who had taken a room upstairs, keeping to himself most of the evening. William can't help but wonder about the man's story, what brings him to this little village, and what secrets he might carry with him. But such is the way of things in a tavern. People come and go, each with their own tales to tell or keep hidden. With a sigh, William heaves himself up from his chair and begins the nightly ritual of closing up the tavern. He banks the fire, wipes down the tables, and makes sure the barrels of ale are properly sealed. As he works, his mind drifts to the stories that were told tonight. Tales of love and loss, of adventure and homecoming. He thinks of the young couple he spotted in the corner, their heads bent close together as they whispered and laughed. Perhaps tonight was the start of their own story, one that will be told and retold in this very tavern in years to come. William moves slowly through the empty room, his footsteps echoing softly in the stillness. He pauses for a moment at the spot where old Thomas the baker usually sits, remembering the twinkle in the man's eye as he regaled the younger patrons with stories of his wild youth. Thomas wasn't here tonight, laid up at home with a fever, but William knows he'll be back as soon as he's able. The tavern just isn't the same without him. As he climbs the narrow stairs to his own modest quarters, William feels a deep sense of contentment settle over him. It's been a good night. A night like so many others he's seen in his years as tavern keeper. There have been challenges, to be sure, brawls to break up, debts to collect, difficult customers to appease. But through it all, William knows that he wouldn't trade this life for anything. The tavern is his home, his purpose, and he takes great pride in providing a place of warmth and welcome for all who cross its threshold. Tomorrow will bring new faces, new stories, perhaps even new challenges. But for now, as he settles into his bed and listens to the gentle creaking of the tavern's timbers, William allows himself a moment of peace. He knows that whatever the future holds, the tavern will endure, a constant presence in the ever-changing landscape of village life. And as long as there are people to gather beneath its roof, to share a meal and a tale and a sense of belonging, William will be here to keep the hearth fires burning, the tankards full, and the spirit of community alive. As the first light of dawn begins to peek through the cracks in the tavern's shutters, William drifts off into a contented sleep. The tavern may be quiet now, but soon enough it will come alive again with the buzz of conversation, the clatter of dishes, and the warmth of companionship. And at the centre of it all will be William, the steadfast keeper of this little slice of medieval life, ready to welcome another day in the heart of his village. As the mysterious hooded stranger retires to his room for the evening, the tavern gradually empties of boisterous patrons. The once lively hall grows hushed, with only the crackling of the dying fire and the soft murmur of a few stalwart regulars nursing their final cups. William makes his rounds, collecting empty tankards and bowls, as serving wenches sweep up crumbs and wipe down the long trestle tables. In a quiet corner, two shy young villagers linger, their heads bent close in intimate conversation. The young man, an apprentice cooper named Henry, nervously fiddles with his mug as he sneaks glances at the rosy-cheeked lass across from him. Sarah, the miller's daughter, smiles coyly and twirls a lock of her flaxen hair. They speak in hushed tones of their hopes and dreams, their hands inching closer until they touch tentatively on the worn tabletop. The tavern has seen countless such budding romances over the years, a place where hearts connect over shared drinks and laughter. As the night grows late, William gently encourages the last stragglers to drain their cups and be on their way. He has a long day ahead tomorrow, with provisions to order and a new batch of ale to start brewing. The regulars bid him good night, their forms swaying slightly as they step out into the cool night air. The young couple reluctantly part ways, but not before Henry boldly places a chaste kiss on Sarah's hand, promising to call on her soon. With the last patrons gone, William bars the door and sets about his final tasks for the evening. He places the night's earnings in a locked strongbox and gives the main hearth a final stir, banking the coals to ensure a warm fire to greet him in the morning. His wife Eleanor emerges from the kitchen, her face flushed from the heat of the ovens. She wipes her hands on her apron and surveys the empty common room with a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. "Another good night, my love," William says, draping an arm around her shoulders. The ale flowed freely and the company was merry. Eleanor nods, leaning into his embrace. "Aye, 'twas a fine crowd tonight. That storyteller certainly kept them entranced. And did you see young Henry and Sarah in the corner? Mark my words, there'll be wedding bells before the year is out." William chuckles and presses a kiss to her temple. "Nothing escapes your keen eye, does it? Come, let us to bed. The morning will be here all too soon." The couple climb the narrow staircase arm in arm leaving the darkened tavern hall below. Outside, the village lies still and silent, save for the occasional bark of a dog or hoot of an owl. One by one, the lighted windows wink out like spent candles until only the tavern's upper windows remain aglow. Soon, even those flicker and fade, plunging the street into a peaceful darkness. As we draw the curtain on this glimpse into a medieval tavern's evening, we're reminded of the enduring role these establishments played in the fabric of community life. More than just a place to eat, drink, and rest one's head, the tavern served as the social heart of the village, a space for people to connect, share stories, conduct business, and seek merriment. For a few hours each night, the tavern transported folks from the toil and drudgery of medieval life, offering a warm hearth, a listening ear, and a sense of belonging. These humble taverns may be lost to history, but their legacy lives on in the pubs, inns, and community hubs we gather in today. Whenever we raise a glass with friends, swap stories with strangers, or seek shelter from the road, we're participating in a tradition that stretches back centuries to the bustling common rooms and crackling hearths of medieval taverns like William's. And so, as we drift off to sleep, let our minds linger a while longer in that cozy, candlelit space with the scent of wood smoke and the sound of clinking tankards softly lulling us to our dreams. Good night, dear listener, and may your own journeys always lead you to a welcoming tavern door. If this foray into the fascinating world of medieval tavern life has piqued your curiosity, I encourage you to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more immersive explorations of history, perfect for whiling away a sleepless night. Until next time, be well and dream deep.